Listening on Audible helps your imagination soar. Whether you listen to stories, motivation, any genre you love, you can be inspired to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, new ways of thinking. Maybe you'll find inspiration in the incredible true story of Black female mathematicians at NASA in Hidden Figures, or the fantasy world of Throne of Glass. There's more to imagine when you listen. As an Audible member, you get to choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500 500. That's audible.com/imagine or text imagine to 500 500.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites, like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies, like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Hello, welcome. Let's chat. It's hard. You want to talk? I know, that's disappointing. Sit back. Let's work this out. How's it going? What are we doing here? Where are you going? Hey there. Wow. It's not always easy. It's amazing if you think about it. Let's think about this. Strange. I have some thoughts about that. Life is hard. Trauma bonded.
Welcome to this episode of Trauma Bonded. I'm Elly Westberg, and T is sailing the high seas with all those kids. Send a prayer into the universe for their safe return. Last week, I was able to have a conversation with past This Is Actually Happening storyteller Guillermo Ruiz de Santiago. His episode was released on February 15th, 2022, Season 11, Episode number 222, What If You Were a Stranger in Your Own Home? He shares his profound confrontation with death and grief since losing his own father in the same apartment in which he witnessed the loss of Daniella. I strongly recommend re-listening to his original episode on Wondery or on thisisactuallyhappening.com or wherever you get your podcasts before continuing on with this episode. Without further ado, here is the conversation I had with Guillermo. Okay. This is Elly with Trauma Bonded, and I'm talking to Guillermo, and this is a storyteller update, and he was our storyteller from episode 222 of This Is Actually Happening, What If You Were a Stranger in Your Own Home? And I know that you have an update for us, so thank you for joining us. And let's just start with first things first. Why did you end up submitting your story to This Is Actually Happening?
Hi, Elly. Well, first, because I was a fan of the show, of This Actually Happening. I really think it's a podcast that it's very unique because you only hear the voice of the people that it's being interviewed. So I think it's very immersive and it's unusual. And the thing that I live in that year of my experience in that episode, it was also unusual. So I think it was the perfect match. I think it was like an experience that it's so unique and it had to be told in a unique way, in a unique format. And that's why when I became a fan, and then I was like, it's very tricky because sometimes you wish to be part of that podcast, but to be part of that podcast, it means that you have to live like a traumatic event. So it's very contradictory. And when I lived that experience, I was like, because I didn't process it like that. I was like, oh, this is a unusual story, unusual. So maybe I'm going to submit it. And I was worried that it wasn't unusual enough. But then I remember that you, Elly, because you interviewed me first in the pre-interview, you were like acknowledging that it was unusual. Like, yes, what you live, it was unusual. And I was like, how come? Like, it's very, like the mind, it's very strange because sometimes we normalize the worst thing that we live. And we tell ourselves that it wasn't that bad.
Right. It's almost as a way, it's a way to cope with it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, your story is so interesting. The way that you tell it, you really set the scene. And even though I've never been to your home or to that apartment, I can picture everything so vividly and so clearly. And there's this element of almost paranormal or something,
Yeah.
which it's not, but there's such a mystery that's enveloped in it. And you're wondering the whole time, what has happened, right?
Yes, yes.
Now, you told me that you've since listened to your episode a lot of times. Do you feel like you hear something new each time you listen to it? And I know that I didn't prep you for this question, but it just made me think of it. Do you hear something new or different every time you listen to it?
Yes, it's a very strange experience to be in a podcast selling that, because it's a long interview. Like, people only hear 40 minutes, 30 minutes, but the interview actually is like a couple of hours. And mine was in 2 separate days. And between days, it passes like 2 months between them. So it was a very long time of the process. And I remember when I first heard the episode, I actually do not remember all my answers. Like, it was like the first time that I listened to the episode, and it was like an extracorporeal experience. It's very weird because I was like, how can I say that? Like, that is the thing that I really love about the process, because the interview is so deep that it touches you the most deepest part of yourself that you are not even aware that you were feeling that or thinking that. And when I listened to it the first time, I was like, I didn't even know that was the conclusion of that experience. So the whole episode was very like it was the first time that I listened to it.
What was it like to listen to that episode the first time? You just commented on it, how you forgot you said certain things. But were you nervous leading up to it? I imagine so. And then I guess, how would you feel once it ended? Did you feel the edit represented your story? And did you feel like we edited anything in a way that we kind of got it wrong?
No, absolutely. I think the edit process was very well done, and it was very beautiful. Like, you put a story together, because sometimes when you are doing an interview, you feel like you're just saying things that do not make sense, and you make the team of This Actually Happening made the interview to make sense. And the thing that it was more revealing for me, it was that it wasn't intended to be an episode about home or house or the feeling of belonging to a place. That wasn't the case. But when I listened to the episode, like, it was very revealing for me that the house and the concept of our home was very important for me. And that was something I was pursuing since my childhood.
Yeah, I recently re-listened to your episode, and that is sort of the note that it ends on, right? It is the note that it ends on, that home isn't a place, that's something you find inside yourself.
Exactly.
Do you want to talk more about that?
Like, that is one of the things that I am most passionate about, the concept of home. One of the things that I said in that episode is I'm a true crime fan, but at the same time, I'm a horror movie fan. And houses and homes are very like an entity that it's very present, because when you are attacked in your home, or where something is threatening your home, is like very close to your even body. It's like your house is your body, but in the exterior.
Yes.
So I think it's very intimate and personal. And the houses, I'm in a current position right now where I am already living by myself, and I am paying a mortgage. Like, there's a place that I said, like, oh, okay, it's my home. But at the same time, I know it's a mirror. It's a mirage. Like, I know that home can be destroyed. And I say this in my episode, but here in Mexico are very aware of earthquakes. And it's constant that we are very aware that maybe it's going to come an earthquake, and you're going to lose your home. So you are attached to your house, but at the same time, you have to be present that something could happen that can ruin your home forever.
Right. A structural home is fleeting.
Exactly. Yes.
It's funny how we are very prideful over the ownership of a space, isn't it?
Yes.
And we are particular about what happens in our own space, in our own home. And when people come in, we expect them to be a certain way, just as we are in a certain way in other people's homes.
exactly.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And you talk about that in your episode as well. So you're no longer in that apartment
No.
and you bought your own home. Are you still in Mexico City?
Yes, I'm still in Mexico City, and I was so lucky to even be able to pick the neighborhood that I wanted to live. Like, it was like, if I'm going to make the big investment in my life, have to be like a place where at least I'm comfortable.
Well, congratulations. I'm happy for you.
Oh, thank you so much, Elly.
So did you receive a lot of contact from listeners after your episode aired?
Yes, and I wasn't expecting that. Like, yes, I share my social media, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe people are going to write, but I actually didn't know what to expect. But I receive messages that are very kind. Like, it's amazing because it not only took the time to listen to the full episode that it's 40 minutes long, but even to search for me in Instagram and then write to me. So it's like a triple effort, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Oh.
And the thing that it's very like interesting to me is that the experience that I share in This Actually Happening is not so much common. Like, it's not easy for people to say, oh, I lived that exact same situation as you do. But at the same time, they say, but I understand how you felt. So that is the connection that is very powerful. Like, you don't need to live the exact same thing to understand when a human is in an uncomfortable position and do not have the agency to be like, oh, I'm uncomfortable, or I want to be selfish because I am in a situation that it's not my own, in my own house.
Yeah, that's the whole concept of the personal is universal, right?
Yes, exactly.
When you find that common humanity.
Yeah.
That's I love that people reached out to you. Did you read a lot of what was said on social media? I mean, the people that didn't reach out to you, they comment on Facebook or Instagram. Did you read about your episode?
Yes, because sometimes you want to not do it. Like, you are like, oh no, that is my experience and I'm not going to read. But curiosity is like a strong force. So yes, I was reading everything, and people like really connected to the story. And that was very powerful because it transformed the story and the experience and even the memory of Daniella, not only into a mysterious story, but something with meaning. I think people gave the meaning to the story and helped for me to process it in a very respectful way. It was like, oh, okay, so me being part of a podcast, it's not me just wanted to share and looking for fame or looking for likes. It's like sharing a story about a person who died. And I want just to share, like, it was an unusual and very unexpected way. But like, to know that people think of Daniella at least in 40 minutes all around the world, it comes in comfort. I don't know how to say it. Like, it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's sort of like giving her life a little bit more remembrance.
Exactly.
There was a famous poet that said, we face 3 deaths when we die. The first death is our physical death. The second death is when we're buried or laid to rest. And the third death is when people stop saying our names.
Wow.
So I think of that often. And sadly, as we get older, that list keeps getting longer. But I try to say the names of the loved ones I've lost when I can so that they're not dying that third death. So to say Daniella's name is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
Were there any comments or questions you'd like to address that people seem to suppose, but they were wrong about and you'd like to clarify?
Yes. And this is even like a correction of myself, because the other thing, it was like the first half of the episode in This Actually Happening, it was like almost I was like not blaming, but trying to put fingers on the family of Daniella. Like, oh, they are acting very strange. And when I had to live it by myself, the grief process, because at that time, yes, I have like lost, I don't know, family members, yes, and pets, but I have never experienced the death in a very close manner or experience. So I was very rushed to judge. I was like, why aren't they crying? Why are they want to put the funeral together in 24 hours? And since that moment that I recorded the episode to now, I have experienced a very close death. It was my father's. And I understand completely all the bizarre ways that they acted, because I almost acted the same way when I experienced the same thing that they lived.
Oh, wow. Can you, well, of course, I'm so sorry that you lost him since then. Can you talk about maybe some of those specific ways that you feel like you grieved or reacted like they did?
Absolutely. And I can make a very short version. I know we have a short time, but
We got plenty of time.
yeah, oh, thank you, Elly. Okay, in 2022, in October, my father died in that same apartment. And I just want to share the experience, but because it was like a sudden death, like it was unexpected. And I was the one who found the dead body of my father. So that is,
no.
yes, it was very, I think I am pretty sure to say that it was one of the worst experience, or I don't want to say worst, like the strongest or more raw experience that I'm going to live through all my life.
Yes.
At that time, I didn't live in that apartment anymore. So I was the one who was rich, and my sister called me and said, "Hey, could you visit my father, our father, because he isn't responding the phone." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to return to my teenage home, and I'm just going to open the door, and I'm just going to see my father, and we're going to hug, and I'm going to say my sister is just going crazy, like she's just exaggerating everything." But then I start to calling my father, and the thing that he did not pick up the phone. So when I was getting closer to the house, to that apartment, I was like, okay, there's a tiny possibility that is something awful happening in that apartment, but it's very small. Like in my mind, I was trying to reassure myself, like, no, you're going to open your house, the door, and everything is going to be okay. And when we live in a third floor at that time. My father lived in a third floor. When I was stepping the steps, I was like breathing more heavily. Like it was like a horror movie. Like right now I understand that cinema, it's not an invention. Like people do horror movies and great movies like that because that is the way we experience things. Everything was like in slow motion. And I remember when I unlocked the door and I opened the door, I remember every single detail. And that is the moment when I knew what trauma is. Like I remember the TV blasting through all the volume. I remember, and I'm sorry if I cry.
It's okay.
I remember.
I cry all the time on our show.
Yeah, it's liberating. Like I don't fight tears anymore, but
yeah,
I remember even like the fly, that sound in the apartment, very close to my ear. And I don't even know if the fly had to do with the death of my father. Like if the fly was on the corpse, like you start to getting very dark thoughts. And when I opened the door and I listened to the TV, through all the volume, I know that something was not right. And it only took me a couple of steps to watch the corpse of my father laying down in the floor, almost in the same place where Daniella's corpse was. It wasn't the exact same place, but it was the same area. So I actually feel like all the experience of Daniella, I do not believe in destiny, and I don't believe that stuff happened for a reason, but I do believe that I learned all the stuff from Daniella to apply it to my father. Like it was like, oh, I am right again in the same exact scenario, but with my father. So I was like blown away. Like I just remember seeing my father, the color of his skin was like purple, and I can tell he was dead almost immediately. Like when you look the dead in the face, you know that that people is dead. And I remember I was just like petrified for a moment and saying like, Dad, like I remember calling his name, even knowing that he's not going to respond. And then I switched to, okay, I have to call 911. It was all over again from Daniella. Like I know that death of a person is a step-by-step process because all the bureaucracy and all the steps of legal stuff. I remember calling 911, and when I tell the operator like, hey, I remember saying, I think my father is dead. Like I cannot even say my father is dead. I have to put some words to make it more easier for the people to listen. And then the operator said, oh, we should try to check if he is dead or not. So she gave me instructions just to put your head in his chest. Take a mirror and put it under his mouth so you can see if he's breathing or not. But every instruction she was telling me, it was for me, taking a lot of me. Like even when she told me, please rest your head in the chest of your father, my father was already dead for 6 hours. So it was a corpse, like the skin was purple. It was, I think, the most traumatic thing that I have done. I was really scared and didn't understand it at that moment. I was like, why I'm not hugging my father? Why I'm not acting like all the actors in movies, crying? Like I am afraid of my own father. I don't even want to get close to him. And I remember putting my head in his chest. I didn't hear anything. But that moment, it felt like a horror movie happening in real time. And it was like traumatic. Like I don't think there's another word just to say what trauma is, just living that moment. Like it brought me forever.
It's weird because, I mean, death is natural, but it's very unnatural to move in and around someone that's gone, especially someone that you loved.
Exactly.
And you know it in your heart that he is gone, but you want to obey what the 911 operator is telling you. And it's potentially traumatizing you probably even more.
Yes, exactly. I was like, you are not even knowing what you're asking for me to just put in my head over my father's body. And I really think that it's that primal human thing of rejecting death. Like I actually remember me physically not getting closer, like it was dangerous. You know, maybe I think it's like the brain or our ancestors of I don't know, the humanity in us don't want to get close to death. Like you have to fight the urgency of getting away of that place.
Wow, I had no idea that you went through that. I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you.
How old was he when he passed?
He was 64 or 63. The thing that I learned, and the other thing that it's similar with Daniella is like, I didn't want an autopsy. Like it was almost the same. The thing that I judged family of Daniella of not doing, like, why don't you want to know more about the death of your daughter? I was exactly the same with my father, because first, I know it was, once that the people you love is dead, like you don't want more answers. Like there's a part of you that is like, okay, let's get this over with, because I know that I have a grieving process to start, so I want to start as early as possible. And the other thing is, because we know, even with Daniella and more with my father, like I know that it was like a natural causes. It was like a heart attack. All the signs were there. Yes, and he was misdiagnosed with anxiety when what he was struggling was like pre-heart attacks, and the doctors was telling them the doctors was telling him that he was getting all the signs of anxiety, but actually it was his heart that it wasn't functioning properly.
Wow, so that was the cause of death.
Exactly.
Heart related.
Yes, heart related.
And you said, you commented on how you puzzled over Daniella's family not wanting an autopsy.
Yes.
Do you see how the deaths are maybe different though? Or do you acknowledge that, because she was young and it seemed to come out of nowhere? It still sort of tracks to me that you might want an autopsy for someone that was so young.
Yes, exactly. I think the main difference was that the ages of the people who died, but at the same time, the thing that I just want to say is like, let me get my train of thought again, because I was going to tell you something that it's in my mind every time.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I probably derailed you.
No. Don't worry, Elly. But yes, actually, it was like, I remember like when all the process of the policemen getting into the apartment, I just want to avoid the situation of Daniella, because I remember with Daniella there was lack of privacy. There was like a sense of a circus, like the door of my apartment was literally open. People can enter, go. That feeling that I promised myself to not let to happen to any of my family, that is the thing that I accomplished. in that moment, I was like, no, only this apartment is going to be the person that it really needed to be. Like the closest one, the ones that really are wanted to be with my father. And there are not only curious person or fly in the wall person that it's like getting through or watching, because that is not beautiful. Like, I know that we sometimes make the dead glamorous in the movies, in the magazine or stuff like that. But when you see a corpse that it's laying in the ground 6 hours, my father was like even 12 hours because my sister wasn't in Mexico City and she asked us to wait. And I actually saw my father turn to purple into almost black. Like I remember the last time I saw my father, his skin was almost black. And the body started like changing very fast, and a lot of corporeal things start happening. And beautiful is not glamorous. Death is not glamorous. Sorry, death is not glamorous, but there is something beautiful in the grieving process that, for me, it's actually very hard to describe because it's very painful, but at the same time, you know your father like in a very different way.
Hey, Prime members! Have you heard? You can listen to your favorite podcasts ad-free? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcast. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcast to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads. Achieving a gorgeous grin from home isn't a total mystery with Bite Clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all of your sleuthing friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Bite Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
That's shocking to me that you sat there with his corpse for that long and that the authorities allowed that to happen. I didn't even know that was... And then to your sister to come in and see him that way... that also feels very traumatizing. Do you feel like that day, that experience, just was it traumatic for you? Do you have PTSD from it?
Yes, definitely. And it's not diagnosed. Like, I don't need to have a professional diagnosis to know that I have PTSD from that. And I don't want to have like a grudge to my sister, like, oh, you make me live this for not only a couple of hours, but a lot of hours, like at least 6 hours. Yes, in watching all. But because I know that when she arrived to the apartment, she was able to scream, she was able to cry. I wasn't able to do that. Like, I do not react that way. I am more like very quiet. Like, yes, I cry, but I was not able to do it. But at the same time, when I watched doing it, I think that way she processed it, the grieving process, and started very early, and I suppress it. So sometimes I really feel like I took, like it's okay for me to encounter my father and then wait 6 hours just for her to not live that. Because you have to be really emotionally strong, stable, and be surrounded by a lot of people to face that, all that trauma. Because if you're alone or if you do not have the right people that support you, I completely understand why people go mad about this stuff. Why people got into alcohol, drugs. Like, I completely understand why people do it. Because right now I was very lucky to be surrounded by my husband, by my mother, like a lot of support. But if I was alone, or if I was even, I don't know, single, or if my mother wasn't here, I don't know, something like that, I completely understand that people just get loose.
Wow. So you mentioned in your episode, that you really had a desire to want to feel more empathetic and maybe less judgmental. Do you feel like you've come a long way with those wishes for yourself?
Yes, like it's the thing is like sometimes when you're experiencing grief, you are learning at the same time all the mixed emotions that you are feeling. Like obviously the other thing is like guilt. I don't know if every sons and daughters feel guilt when their father and mother die because you think that you owe them so much. And it's like, why you do not stay any longer for me to earn more money, to take you to travel around the world, or to
Yeah.
even do something, or even to say to you, like, I am so thankful to you to give me this life, to give me the space to build a career. And I think right now, the thing that I am struggling the most is like I dream of my father like at least 3 times a month. And I think that is the way that I am processing it. And the dreams are not nice, like they are not comforting. It's not that those romantic dreams when people see their loved ones and hold them very tight. It's not like that. It's more like I'm with my father, but there's like a wall that does not let us be together, or my father is locked in a room and I do not have the key, or I only watch my father like from behind and leaving and getting farther and farther away. They're very symbolic because that is the way that I feel. Like people,
Yeah.
like the life itself and tragedy took for me the chance just to have that last conversation with my father and just to say, forgive me if I wasn't the best son that I could be. And I just like want to have that last conversation, and to know that that is not possible also made me realize why people believe in the supernatural. Like it made me believe even in Ouija boards. Like I am so eager to find a way to contact my father, and I don't know. I do not believe in supernatural, but I wish I believe, just to purchase a Ouija board and to have that last conversation.
Yeah, death is so final.
Yeah.
And we always think that we're going to have more time to have the conversations, to say the thank yous and the forgive me's and the I love yous.
Yeah.
And when you don't get to have that, you're left with this incredible feeling of guilt and emptiness and unable to find closure. It's not good to carry those things around, but it's like, what do you do with them? And you're right. That's why people believe in the supernatural. They think of their loved one in heaven or all around them in the air and the energy and their newborn baby and, wherever they see life.
Oh, and I remember actually to be like, I don't know if you watched the movie Talk to Me.
Yes, A24 movie.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I remember watching that movie. I didn't know it was about grief, but I immediately recognized it about it. So I went with my husband to the cinema. I watched the movie, and halfway through the movie, I was like sobbing, like crying.
I bet.
For me, it wasn't like a horror movie. It was like a grief movie, and it was very therapeutic because it's like a way that movie told me you are not alone. Like other people in the world are feeling exactly the way you do. And in the movie, I don't know if people already saw it, but it's this woman that wants to have that last conversation, and she wants to do anything in the world, like even to put herself at risk to have that last conversation.
Yeah.
And I was watching that movie. For me, it meant so much, and it was like a pat in my back to say, there are a lot of people, like you are not alone. There are a lot of people with you in this feeling, and maybe you don't know, and you're not connected because we don't know that we're experiencing this, because these conversations are not easy to have in a coffee or when you're with friends. But this podcast, this Trauma Bonded podcast, it helps us and reminds us that we are together in this.
Yeah, thanks. In that movie, you're right. I mean, thinking back on it, it was as much a horror movie as it was sort of a meditation about grief and that incredible feeling of loss in the movie, the girl loses her mother, and all she wants is to have one more conversation with her. Guillermo, I'm curious, did your father ever listen to your episode that showed up on This Is Actually Happening?
Never. And
Never?
not even, no, it didn't cross my mind to show it to him, because I actually,
Okay.
in that episode, that is the thing that I think it's the hardest thing for me to listen that episode again, because I actually expressed things about my father. Like, and it wasn't things that are not true. Like, I actually believe that same things that I said in that episode, that I say something about my father not being like a parent. I do believe I say something like,
I wrote it down. Do you want me to
oh,
tell you
yeah,
what you said?
yes, please.
You said that you thought of your dad sort of as trying to be the cool dad.
Yes.
And you wanted him to be more of a parent, and you felt like him being in that experience that day with the loss of Daniella, he didn't show up as a parent like you wanted him to.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing that it's very hard with grief is like, we are in the risk that the people that die, we almost, the ones that stay here alive, we want to put them like in a pedestal, like, oh, they were perfect and I didn't change a thing about him. But no, like,
Right.
I acknowledge that my father wasn't the perfect father. But the thing that I right now understand more is like, my father being that father, not perfect father, and being the cool dad, that was the thing that allowed me to be who I am. Like, at that
Absolutely.
time, I requested like, oh, I wish my father was this or that. Right now, I respect so much how my father, I don't know, educate myself and my sister. And parenthood, I bet it's very, very hard. So for me to not have a children and then to request my father, or why aren't you a better dad? It's for me like, no, like I do not have a say about how he chose to live as a father of two.
Yeah, it's interesting because when my father was alive, we're very different politically, and he always joked that he hated that I moved to California and became, uh, whatever I became, opposite of him.
Yeah.
And I would always joke with him and say, Dad, I am the way I am because of you. You taught me to think about things in a different way and challenge the opinions that have been put in front of me, challenge the things that I've been taught. And it just made us end up being different. But I am this way because of you. So as much as I sort of hated how he was politically, I can see clearly that him being passionate about his point of view also made me passionate about mine. And I love him for that.
Exactly. And you stop fighting to change him. Like, I remember, like,
Yeah.
when my father was alive, I was so eager to make him understand my point of view. But right now, because that is not possible, I don't know, it's like you're okay with them being them. Like, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to change you anymore. Like, I respect your views. Like, I don't think that way, but I don't want to change you anymore. And I think that is the good part of grieving, or the good part of your father not being alive, is like you make peace with a lot of things that you fight very hard before in the past.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. I have to ask, and we can go back to your father, but I do want to ask a couple other questions that I'm sure everyone's curious about. I'm curious about, you mentioned that toward the end of your episode that your sister sort of sidestepped into this cult. Whatever became of that? Is she still involved, or what's her status now?
She isn't involved, but she had the personality of being very very manipulated by others. Like, right now, she's like getting out of a relationship where, like, she's very she lacks of something that she wants to follow someone or something or some entity. So if it's not a cult, it's a person. If it's not a person, it's like a trend. Like, I am always ready to be I don't want to be like the rescuer, but I am very like detecting all the things that she said, the language that she used, because I want to be prepared when something, I don't want to say something bad happened, but I know that it's very easy for her to be like seduced in with a person, with a mindset, with the trends. So yes, and I think that is the fight that she's going to fight through all her life, just to find her identity and to not be waiting for someone or some members to tell her what to do, how to think, and just to find her way through life without, I don't know, like getting attached to a mindset that it's not her own.
Yeah, it sounds like she struggles with maybe a little bit with her own identity or feeling comfortable in her own skin. She wants to
Exactly.
be validated and guided by other people.
Yes.
That's a hard one. We
Yeah.
all go through that to some degree, but yeah, some people that jump sort of from cult to maybe fascination with something else. There's
Yes.
always something, right? that
Yeah.
they're now interested in that's going to help them. And then I have to ask you, you mentioned your husband. Congratulations
Oh,
on
thank
getting
you.
married.
Thank you so
Now,
much.
is the husband the same boyfriend you
Yes.
referred to? It is?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
And yeah, the good things to happen in very hard moments like the death of my father is like my husband, in that time he was only my boyfriend, like he was
yeah.
in that same room. Like at first when I faced my father dead, I was alone, but the next call that I made after 911 was my boyfriend, now is my husband. But that moment, it made me realize like this is life. This is the bad times that everyone talks about, like the good times and the bad times. He's already in the bad times. Like, what are we waiting for to get married? Even in the funeral, it felt almost disrespectful for me to just present him as my boyfriend. Like the word boyfriend was very small. And a couple of months after my father died, I was like, we should get married because you are in the good ones and in the bad ones. And I just want for me to be part of our lives like forever. And yeah, we get married.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, what an incredible support to have for him to have gone through both of these things with you and to be able to look at how much it's mirrored this sort of end-to-end experience. I mean, he's truly a witness to so much of the deepest parts of you.
Exactly.
That's just amazing. Now, did your father like him? Would he have been happy that y'all got married?
Yes, absolutely. Like the other thing that happened, I don't know if it happens to you, Elly, but with grief, it happens that even when you are getting like the most happiest moment in your life, it got like a little bit of sadness because you think about like your father, like, oh, I wish my father was here, or you start to imagining what your father say about that. Like, do you? What does he think about this? Like, and that is like the bittersweet. Like, after my father died, my life become more bittersweet and more complex in the emotions. Like, the good moments are good, but at the same time sad. The sad moments are also sad, and they have like this tint of, I don't know, loneliness. And sometimes when something fails in your life, you immediately go back to the grief. I don't know why as humans do this. It's like, oh, I'm feeling bad. I'm going to look more stuff that make me feel more bad about it. It's very complex. Like, it's definitely a before and after.
Wow. So in the end, looking back, are you glad that you were able to share your story on This Is Actually Happening?
Yes. Like, I will do it again. And I actually, the people that are listening, if you're struggling and you're like, I don't know if I should send my story, I do believe like if you feel prepared, it's an emotional roller coaster. Like, you have to know that. But at the same time, you are going to be treated like very well and very respected. Like, your story is going to be very respected, and it's going to be hard, yes, and you're going to relive in it again, but it's like a closure because, as you said, like deaths happen 3 times. When you go to and share your experience, it happened 3 times. It's like when you think about it, when you submit your story, when you record it, and then when it is released. So it's like phases, and you are dealing with the story again and again until there's like a closure. And if you do not feel like there's a closure, you can re-listen to your story and find new nuances in your story. And it's like very therapeutic.
Well, I'm so glad that it was therapeutic for you. We're so lucky to get to talk to people like you and hear your stories. Do you have anything else that we didn't talk about? Was there anything that you didn't get to pour out of your heart and mind that we didn't talk about?
No, I think like the title of your podcast is perfect. Trauma Bonded. And yeah,
thank you.
Yes,
we got a lot of slack for that.
Oh yeah, why?
Because it's not accurate. That's not, I mean, what we do is not what technically trauma bonding is, but we just took that term and made it our own because we are talking a lot about trauma and we're bonded as friends. And, you know, and in the thing that we say, we're bonded to the storyteller and the story and our listeners on each other. Well, thank you for saying that. I kind of woke up in the middle of the night and I thought I had it. But I think people received us really critically just by virtue of this is actually happening being such a beloved show. And that's okay. We were expecting to be received critically. But we didn't realize people would also hate the name.
I really love it because I think sometimes when you experience trauma, you feel like you are alone. But at the same time, when you see trauma bonded, like in the same phrase, it's like opposites. Like you live trauma, but at the same time, you are together. We are together in this. Like for me, it's reassuring. It's like a love letter almost, like for people experiencing trauma. It's like a reminder, like you are not alone. There's a lot of people that are dealing trauma. Each person deals it in a different way, but at the same time, we can understand each other if we talk out loud.
Thank you for listening. In the spirit of never dying a third death, Guillermo and I have decided to dedicate this episode in loving memory to Daniella Col and to his father, Joaquin Guillermo Ruiz de Santiago. Thanks to Guillermo for further sharing his life with us all. You can reach out to him on Instagram at GuillermoRSS. That's GuillermoRSS on Instagram. Thanks to the This Actually Happening team, including Whit, Missildine, and Andrew Waits, and the maker of our music and website, Nathaniel Tromboli, and thanks to Cathy Sitzes for editing this episode, and Katie Capel for building those blasted Instagram posts. Next week, August 14th, we will drop our own rebroadcast of an older episode of Trauma Bonded so that we can sort of have a mini vacay this summer. Look to your feeds for that surprise next week. And we hope to drop another 1 or 2 more storyteller updates before the summer ends. Stay tuned. We are trauma bonded to the story, to the storyteller, to the listeners, and to each other. Thanks for spending time with me today. Love you, T, wherever you are at this very moment.